every 4th of July, Memorial Day, and Veterans Day, Happy Healthy Wife always wants me to make this wonderful, tasty Jell-o dessert because it's very patriotic in its colors. It's got the red layer, the white layer, and the blue layer. It's the red, white, and blue Jell-o dessert that looks fantastic for the holidays. And the secret of this dish tasting so good is that middle white layer. A little tricky, but with the instruction we're about to give you, you can make it flawlessly every single time. The only thing with this dish though is it's gonna take you some time to finish. You gotta do a layer, let it cool, let it set before you do the next layer. So it's gonna happen 3 times, and it's gonna be about 1 hour to 2 hours in between each layer, but the results are phenomenal, and you're gonna wanna do this dish so that you can have it on your patriotic holidays. Our favorite flavors are raspberry Jell-o for both the top and bottom layer. We're only gonna need 3 ounces though of this Jell-o. As you can see, this box is 6 ounces. So what does that mean we gotta do? We're gonna split it in half, so we have half in each layer. Take a rip. So I use 2 bowls of the same size to measure at half and half. And if you're not perfect, doesn't matter. There we go. About half in each bowl. And now we're good to go. 1 for the red layer, 1 for the blue layer. If you want to switch, I'm going to use a blue gelatin on the top layer. Be my guest. We just don't find it tastes as good. Raspberry is the way to go. Into a small saucepan goes 1 cup of water. Get it to a boil. Then after that, we're going to add in the Jell-o and 12 ounces of raspberries. Fresh. You can use frozen raspberries if you like, but we have found that the fresh ones is no comparison. They just taste a whole lot better. Now that water is boiling, we're going to add in 3 ounces of raspberry Jell-o. And you can turn it off. Stir it up. Doesn't take much to stir it. It's ready to go. We're going to pour the Jell-o mixture into an 8 by 11 casserole dish to start to let it to cool. You can also put the raspberries in there first, but we're going to do it backwards. We're going to add in the raspberries to form our bottom layer. And that was 12 ounces, or about 2.5 cups of washed raspberries. Spread them all out evenly. Let everybody get a chance to have a bite of raspberry in this wonderful bottom red layer. Now you could let it cool sitting out like this, but it's going to take a long time. So we're going to cool it in the refrigerator. If you're using frozen raspberries, it's going to gel faster, but you might notice that it's not gelling very quickly here. So we're going to put it in the refrigerator to help it to gel. But if your refrigerator is anything like mine, if you take a close look, you can see that the level is not even. The raspberries are more in the sauce the farther back you go. So we're going to even that up. We're going to take a wadded up paper towel, put it in the back of the dish until the Jell-o dessert looks even. So while we're letting the red layer cool, we're going to work on the middle layer, the very important, tasty, creamy middle layer. The reason why we're going to do this layer now is because we're going to let this layer cool before we pour it onto the firm red layer. I'll show you how to know if it's cool enough or not later, but for now we're just going to cook it now so it'll start cooling in the outside air while the refrigerator is cooling down the bottom layer. So let's go. And this one we got to be careful not to boil the cream. So I'm going to put the heat down to about a medium to a medium low. You do not want this half and half to boil. We're going to add, as if creamy wasn't enough, a half a cup of sugar. And we're going to slowly cook this to make it nice and warm enough to allow the gelatin to do its job. You don't have to boil it, and in fact, you do not want to boil this white layer. If you let the cream boil, the result will be a gritty middle layer, which is not what you want. You want this to be silky, smooth, and oh so tasty. Grittiness, not acceptable. Now we got our cup of half and half. We added half a cup of sugar. Gonna stir it up. And we're gonna continue to warm it up. You wanna get it warm enough so the gelatin will be hot enough so that it's gonna gel, but you do not want to boil this layer, otherwise you get a gritty texture. So how do you make sure you do that? Well, the moment you turn it up, you do turn it up to a nice medium heat, and the moment you notice that the layer, that the water is starting to show some bubbles, it's hot enough. All right, see the bubbles forming on the outside of the layer? That's getting pretty hot already. So make sure you turn it down, nice slow bubbles. No boiling. Looks like it's pretty hot already. We're just gonna turn it down to a simmer, so low as we can go. Now we get the gelatin ready. We have 2 tablespoons of water and a package of gelatin. Let's layer the gelatin in the water. Stir it in to get a nice even paste. Now it's ready for the hot bath. Make sure you stir the gelatin around to get it all nice and dissolved in the hot liquid. Make sure again this liquid is not too hot. If it's too hot, the cream layer will become gritty. Right now the gelatin, cream is all dissolved. Time to turn off the heat. Add in the sour cream. This will also start the cooling process. To that wonderful layer, add a taste of vanilla. We're going to add a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Stir it all up. Just one creamy, smooth layer. A creamy white layer waiting for the Jell-o to get cold enough to add to the top. Okay, let's look at the white layer. It's kind of cool to the touch. I can touch the pot easily. Not bad at all. And if we mix it up, just a little bit thickened. It's getting there. Still not thick enough. We have to refrigerate it. And you can see after about an hour, you have the red layer. It is now pretty well gelled. Now you want to make sure the white layer is cool and the red layer is gelled, because if that is not the case, when you pour on the white layer, it is just going to melt the bottom layer and create red swirls in your white layer, which you do not want. So that's why we let it cool. You can see as you pour it on, there are no red swirls happening. That's a good thing. When it's too hot, you will see red swirls, and that is not what you want to see. You do see a few little red swirls. Right there is a little bit of red swirling. But mostly there is no red swirls. Get the last bit. So now there is a nice solid white layer right above the red layer. And again, we're going to put this in the refrigerator right where it was before. Try and make sure it's evened out. And about another hour, we'll have the blue layer ready to pour on this layer. You see, you want to try and get that white layer as straight as possible, flat as possible. I've had to add in a paper towel to even it out. Why so? Because shelves in refrigerators are sloped in the current refrigerators. And so now we're going to let that cool for about an hour to set pretty hard while we work on the blue layer. So about a half hour after the second layer is in and cooling down, let's start creating the third layer. 1 cup of water. Now if you want your layers slightly thicker, you can do so. Just add an extra half cup of water. Now the 1 cup of water is boiling hot, go ahead and flip it off. Because you don't need to boil the Jell-o, raspberry flavored Jell-o. There we go, pour in the raspberry flavored Jell-o. We're gonna stir it up. I can smell the raspberry. Now the original recipe used raspberry Jell-o, but also in the Jell-o they had the juice from the can of blueberries. We're not using canned blueberries, we're using fresh. So that altered the way it worked, because that made the Jell-o itself look blue. If you want to use a blue Jell-o as well, there are blue Jell-os out there. I personally would not use a blue Jell-o because the flavor is not as good as the raspberry. And you can see this is going to become more of a purple, but that was about 12 ounces of blueberries, or 2.5 cups of blueberries. We're going to stir it in and let this cool down for another half hour while the actual Jell-o in the refrigerator is cooling down, to get a full hour later so that we can pour it in and not melt the top layer, because this layer will be cool by then. Still a little warm to the touch. The wonderful blue layer of blueberries. It's a little warm. We can test it, see if it's going to melt the white layer. White layer's been gelling like a felon. White layer's been gelling for about an hour. Looks like it's not going to. You can also do it slowly. Alright, we're looking pretty good. Looking pretty good. Alright, not melting the white layer. And get a nice topping of a blue layer. Mostly blue because the blueberries are a little bit of melting, you can see. A little bit, but not much. So we're good. We're okay. So there it is. The third layer is complete. It's beautiful. You can see the 3 layers right here. The red, the white, and the blue. At this point, we like to cover the dish in a layer of saran wrap and then put it in the refrigerator. Again, trying to make sure the layers are even as we put it in. So one last layer now it's covered in saran wrap to put in. Again, trying to make it nice and level. Level off for a wonderful Jell-o dessert that we will have tomorrow, because it takes so long to set. You can see the red, white, and blue layers. Unfortunately, we put in the top layer, the blue layer. It's a little too warm. And so the white layer melted a little bit. And so it got the top a little bit white. But that's okay. Let's measure that out. Okay, so about here, going across. I'm going to take out a cross so you can see it's nice and solid. And you'll get to see, hopefully, the 3 layers that were created. Now you get to see the cross section of the red, white, and blue layers. Very patriotic and very tasty. Looks a little bit of the cream rose to the top, but still leaves the blue layer fairly intact. But don't take my word for it. Let's see what the kids think.
The middle layer is very creamy. Nice and smooth, not grainy whatsoever. It has a sweet flavor. And I really don't like Jell-o, but this is like, the middle part saves the Jell-o.
The middle part brings it together. And the blueberries and raspberries.
By texture?
The raspberries are a tiny bit tart, which contrasts the
Sour blueberries?
middle layer. The blueberries are sweet. And This makes it a good Jell-o.
The big thing I noticed is that the blueberries pretty much are the texture. Like when you bite it, it's like all soft, and there's that big round blueberry you have to bite into.
Crunch.
And the raspberries kind of just melt away.
But all the flavors really complement each other. So it's good.
The white layer is the best one.
You want a white Jell-o?
What?
You want a completely white Jell-o?
I think it sounds better than it would taste.
You'd be right.
I feel like the white Jell-o is only good because the other layers are around it.
Good job. Man, this Jell-o reminds me of our barbecue days.
What do we have on those barbecue days exactly?
My favorite barbecue item is the cheeseburger.
By who?
With the Bobby Flay cheese. Here. Oh.
Editing.